Hey everyone, welcome back to the MHP Show podcast. I'm your host, Derek Vickers. On the MHP Show, we're talking about anything and everything that has to do with mobile home park operations, acquisitions, managing, turning around, value-add projects, and anything else associated with mobile home parks. And today, I want to bring to you a special episode. It's a little different than what we've done in the past. This is an episode for 2025. Now, we're not going to be cliche and say, hey, we're going to make 2025 our best year ever. Obviously, we want to do that. But if you've been in the real estate business for the last couple of years, it's been definitely more difficult, at least for me, to find deals and various other things. So we want to help people get their buying back on track. We want to help people get their acquisitions on track. We want people to be able to go in and still get their first deal, because it is still possible for you to get your first deal. There's a lot of opportunities still in this space. And if you love the asset class of mobile home park investing like I do, then you'll enjoy some of the content I'm going to deliver to you on this episode. Now, I'll just share an example with you on a couple of things, because the first point I want to talk about here is as we're going through this, like, you have to get your mentality correct. You're like, oh gosh, Derek's going to talk about this shit. Well, because it's important. It's important. Like, you have to constantly shift in your mind what you're thinking, right? And if you're not willing to do that, then you're just going to stay where you are. Because at the end of 2025, the goal for us is to get from here to here. We don't want to be in the same place. And in order to get to a different place than you're at, you got to make some changes. You got to give some shit up. You got to not be the old you. This is for certain. Like, you are not going to get to the next place being the same person that you are today. I was talking to a guy and I asked him, because it's a different mindset to go from zero to your first million to your first 10, then go into your first 100 million in personal net worth, right? Stuff has to change, right? And so the first thing that has to change is your mentality. No more, I can't do that. No more, like, that doesn't work for me. No more of this. You have to get your head wrapped around that you're the problem, and you're probably talking to yourself pretty poorly. I'll give you an example. In 2024, we were closing some deals. It was getting towards the end. We needed some more capital to raise for these deals. And I don't know what it is when you're on like capital raising stuff. Sometimes you like get some doubts in your mind. And I know this because I've trained myself to do this, and that whenever I get that doubt in my mind, I just flip the thought. No. We're going to get it done. No. It is going to happen. And so I'm like constantly at cause over that. Now, I will tell you, years ago, this was so bad. I had so much like negative self-talk. I just talked crappy to myself. And then I was able to get rid of that through various things. And now it's just like, one little thing will pop up and I can change it, right? But you have to be aware of that you're doing that. Right? If you're not aware that you're doing that, then, you're just going to self-sabotage yourself. I self-sabotaged myself for so long. And, I never got where I wanted to go. I never got where I wanted to go because I was doing that. But first off, you have to just say to yourself that, like, hey, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to get my mentality around where I want to go. Because if you say there's no good deals out there, there's not going to be any good deals out there. If you say such and such is going to happen, well, then that thing's probably going to happen, right? But, every time that I've done this, and on this capital raise I was talking about, we got it done. And, right, it's just flipping of the mindset. If I would have thrown in the towel there, I'm like, oh, screw it, nothing's going to happen, then nothing was going to happen, because you are way more powerful than you think, and you have more actually say on what is happening in your little universe around you, because that's your universe. You're either creating it or someone else is creating it on you. And I'm sorry, I like to be the one creating, not the one being created upon, right? And so when you're changing that, you're changing those thoughts that come in your head, you are creating, right? You always want to be in the creation mode. So this is the first thing that we have to get to, right? If you want to have a better year in 2025, if you want to buy your first mobile home park in 2025, you got to straighten this shit out, dude, because you've been told a lot of mess growing up, taught in the school system, a lot of stuff that is not true. We still get told stuff that is not true, right? And this stuff can keep you from getting to where you want. If you have a shitty belief, if you have a money problem, if you have a can't find deals problem, if you've got any problem, right? There's a couple things that could be going on, right? There's probably a lie there. There's a lie there. If you have a problem with money, there's a lie you've got sitting there around money. You got to handle and figure out. I don't know what that is for you. So I had terrible money beliefs when I was growing up. I just thought it was so hard to get. I thought it wasn't abundant, it was scarce, because I grew up in a middle-class family. Like, we didn't live under a bridge, but still it was like, hey, we can't do this because of money. We can't do this because of money. We can't do this because of money. We never fucking talked about money. Gosh, said I wasn't going to cuss on this, but here we are. But we never wanted to talk about money. So it's sort of like a taboo topic. And we just never talked about wealth or money. It just wasn't anything. Right. And without that, and I sort of had to come up with my own money beliefs, and it wasn't good. Right. So there were lies on the line. And if you're having problems, again, in something, there is a lie on the line. Right. If you are pushing, here's another little corollary to that. If you're pushing in your business, you're doing all the work you can, and you're not getting any results, then there's someone in your vicinity, in your business, in your life that's holding you back. That has an intention that's counter to yours, right? Because you should be able to make things happen. And if they're not happening, there's something sitting there. Okay. So that's the first thing we got to handle. We got to handle you, and whatever that is, dude. I mean, you need to fucking handle yourself, right? You've seen some of my posts lately talking about responsibility and taking more responsibility. But when are you going to take responsibility for you? When are you going to take responsibility for your family? When are you going to take responsibility for the life that you either like or dislike? And, I have some, I don't, I want to get to the next level. So if I'm satisfied with where I'm at right now, I can't get to the next level, right? So even me, I had to recalibrate at the beginning of the year. I'm like, wow, I'm actually in a different condition than I thought I was. So I need to take steps to get to the next condition and change my operating basis to get to the next level. So this is a recalibration for me too at the beginning of the year, because, you just realize you get stuck in doing stuff the same way. And then, although, we've made strides and people would say, oh my gosh, Derek, you're doing so well. While I will validate that and say, yes, I've done well. But I will, on the other hand, I'll be like, well, I know I can do more. And I know that I am actually capable of 1,000 times more than that. And even, who knows what the potentials are, right? So this is number one, because this is you, okay? You're the architect of this. So you are you, and you are senior to everything, right? So let's just assume that, right? And if you can fix you, the things around you will fix and then handle themselves. Okay, so that's one thing. I could do a whole thing on that, but I'm just trying to give you some quick things here to get the year off right, and you can get your first park or go from 5 parks to 10 parks or 10 parks to 20 parks. It's really the same system until you get up to scaling and operations and things like that. You have to change that, because operating 100 lots is different than operating 2,000. Look, you're going to have to set some targets. You're going to have to set a target for you to get to. So we have different targets that we want to hit this year. We want to do 30 million in acquisitions in the first 6 months. So how did we do that? Well, how did we come up with this goal? For the first thing I was going in Chat GPT, and I was like messing around, asking it for some calculations. And I was like, hey, if we buy 25 million bucks worth of parks for the next, or worth of real estate for the next however long, if we can get the properties to double in value in the first 2 to 3 years, and then they'll double in the next 5 years, and then when they hit 10, the value will double again, how much would the portfolio be worth in like 20 years or something? It was like, a few $billion. I was like, okay, that's cool. I mean, I think it's real that we can buy 25 million bucks worth of stuff every year. And so I was like, I think we can buy more than that as we scale. But, it was like, okay, then let's set this for 6 months, right? And see if we can do it and get the team behind it and, start rolling and see if we can do this, right? So this is my target, right? So whatever your target is, whether that's, I want to buy 100 million the next 2 or 3 years, whatever it is, right? Just break it down, right? Break it down. And you want to make the target, you want to make the big target, for sure. So I have 2 sets of targets. I have one target that's super massive, the one that's just hey, that's what I'm going for, in total. But hey, this target this year will get me there. This target this year will get me there. And those, the minor targets, you need to set them at a point where it's like, not where, hey, we're going to buy, $1 trillion worth of real estate in the first 6 months. You're going to be like, dude, this is kind of a dumb goal. Like you're not going to get excited about that, but it has to be at a point to where it pulls you, and you'll know when you hit that goal, because you'll set a goal, you'll set this target, and it won't excite you. But the one that's like, oh, that one will excite me because it pushes me a bit, right? So that's what I do. Okay. And maybe we're shooting too low for that. Okay. We could be. So look, you got to set the target, right? Set the target. Okay. And now we're going to work backwards from this. So let's say your goal is to get your first park or your second park, whatever, right? So now we're going to back into that. Like, how are you going to get that? How'd you get your first park? Was it cold calling? Did you get it from a broker? Did you get it from a wholesaler? Did you build a relationship? I don't know how you got your first park. Okay. But however you did, that is the successful action you will want to repeat. If you did it via cold calling, okay, maybe you can go back and get the numbers and figure out how many cold calls that you made to get that. If it was maybe 1,000 cold calls, then you want to do 1,000 cold calls again. Okay. It's pretty simple, right? So you may have to back into your numbers and say, hey, if I was making 20 cold calls a day and I got one park and we did 1,000 calls, hey, okay, so we'll continue to do 20 calls a day. That's what the numbers say. Hey, but if we do 40, maybe we'll get, we can get 2 parks according to the numbers, right? So now you got to back into it, right? So if you do that and you back into it and you're like, hey, all right, well, it took me 1,000 cold calls here to get 1 park. And if you make 20 calls a day, that would take you 50 days of 20 calls a day or whatever, right? But you can make 1,000 calls faster than that. Right, whatever the number is. I don't know if it's 1,000 or if it's 5,000, whatever, right? So you got to make 20 calls for 50 days. And if it took you 5,000 to get your first park, then if you're making 20 calls a day, then it's going to take you 250 days. If you make 40, it's going to take you 125 days. That's if it took you 5,000 calls to get a park under contract. Okay. Now this is the second little secret I'm going to tell you, is that the more that you can actually put out, the more that is actually going to come in, outflow and inflow. So the more that you call out, the more that you do stuff, right? The luckier you're going to get. You heard that? The harder you work, the luckier you get. So it's the same thing here. So when you're backing into these numbers, it's like, okay, if I really want to make this happen faster, then we're going to do more calls, more mailers, more emails, more texts, whatever, right? So you're going to have to break down and back into these goals, right? So you have to do that, because what we're trying to achieve here is getting you to a point where you're like, hey, I'm confident in these actions on a daily basis. So when I take these actions daily, I know it's getting to that target, right? So that's what you have to do. I mean, there's no goal or target that is achieved without the action that is behind it. And the other thing that you're going to have to do here, and this is for all the Facebook and Instagram people that are doing something new every year, as your profiles change with something new every year. So, you start something, you get hit in the mouth, you're so excited, you start your new business, you're like, hey, I'm doing this, I changed my profile, I changed my LinkedIn profile, I feel cool. Then you get punched in the mouth by something. And then you're like, damn, dude, that hurt. Okay, I'm going to go do something else. So what I'm telling you is you have to prepare for adversity, prepare for persistence, build your resilience muscle up, because you're going to get kicked in the mouth, 9 times out of 10. And how this shit works is, if your number is 5,000 calls to get to that park, you're going to make 5,000. You're not going to have any. You're going to be like, what the hell, Derek? You like, you told me to do this, I would have a park. Then you're going to get to like 8,000, and then you'll get one. But then in the next 2,000, you'll get one. So the numbers sort of always work out, whatever. But, you're going to run into some stuff. That's just given. That is so given. And you have to have the mental fortitude to get through that. Okay. And self-discipline. You are going to have the self-discipline to make these calls every day, or whatever kind of outreach that you're doing. Okay, I just gave you some examples of outreach. So whichever one that you're doing. Now, I will tell you here that there is a difference. Studying, listening to podcasts, reading books, I hate to tell you, but that is not taking action. Calling, talking to brokers, calling lenders, calling investors, getting on the phone with investors, going to meet with people, going to meet with sellers, that's action. right? So that's the doingness of it. So if you're listening to a podcast, that is not work. If you're reading a book, that is not action. Yes, you need to do some of that stuff. You need to listen, and maybe you do that while you're driving, but not during, in the insurance business, we used to call this green time during the day, time where businesses were open and we could reach business owners on the phone. That was green time. So you didn't do admin shit during that time. You didn't. Green time was green time because that was the time that you could hustle and make stuff happen. So you'd have to take the same approach to this. And when you talk about scheduling, you're gonna have to schedule your day around this. Because I know some of you got kids, you go to the gym. That's me. I got kids. I go to the gym. I do personal development stuff daily. Like it's, I got to fit it all in. And I do because I prioritize my time. And I know what I'm going to be working on at this point. I know what I'm going to be working on at this point. I know what I'm going to be working on at the next point and the next point and the next point. I'm just giving you high level stuff here. There's other things that other videos and things where I've talked about going into it deep, and I'm going to do more of these. But the whole point is that, we got to get you into action, okay? And whether that's like whatever it is, right? Because the action is going to produce the results. You being busy and doing who knows what, where you think you're busy. And I run into this sometimes. I'll be in the hour, I'm like, okay, I'm doing stuff. I think I'm busy and I'm not. That is called a state of confusion. You're in a state of confusion. If you're just like, an hour or two went by and you're like, damn, what did I get done? I didn't get anything done. You're in a state of confusion and you got to get out of that. How do you get out of that? Is you take, one thing. Hey, okay, I get a piece of paper out. I have to call 20 people. Boom. Okay, I'm going to call 20 people. Boom. You're out of the confusion. That immediate time you pull that one thing and say, I'm going to do that. You're out of the confusion. It's almost like if you're, I don't know, there's stuff flying around you and you're just like, hey, give me this one thing. Boom, let me do that. And then you take the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, right? So building out that day and then having the discipline to stick to the calendar. Now, I'm not saying I like to get up early in the morning. It just works for me better. I'm not saying you have to have this crazy morning routine. Like you don't. I get up super early and I start working. I used to go work out first thing in the morning, but actually I realized that this was actually my time, the perfect time for me to utilize my creative abilities. I felt more effective in the mornings. I could think better. I could think more clearly in the mornings. And so I stopped going to the gym in the morning. Sometimes I do, but it's a later morning. It's not 5 anymore. I'm going to get it done because I want my creative juices flowing for those first few hours. So now I go to the gym either in the morning or even in the evenings because I actually found, I wanted to place this where I had the least, where I would get lower on energy during the day. And sometimes it was in the evening. So I'm like, okay, if I force myself to go do a tough workout in the evenings, I would sort of fuel that energy back. Right. Or before I touch on that, but I was just saying that you want to get on a schedule. This has worked for me. If I'm like, hey, I'm getting up at this time every morning, but you don't have to get up and, humbug and do all this other stuff. Right. You don't have to do that. But you do need to get up and take action, right? I'll give you an example of a bad way of doing this. When I first started on my personal development journey, I would get up and I would do all this stuff and I never took action. I would take a very limited amount of action and I didn't move very far in the beginning. So don't do that. You're like, oh my God, I got so much done. Well, no, you did. You did some personal development stuff, which is important, whatever, but you're not going to spend your whole day on it. Like the things that you need to be doing are what I mentioned earlier: calling brokers, calling wholesalers, calling sellers, getting on with investors and whatnot. But you just have to do that, especially if you don't have any parks now and you're still looking to buy a park. That's what you got to do. And in our mentorship group coaching program, we actually help people get from and develop these plans and start from A to Z and get people to going in and buying their first park and making offers on parks. Sending offers out on parks is a form of outgo and stuff that is going out. Okay. So look, and here's another little secret that I'll give you here is that some of you may disagree with this, but the quantity of the stuff that you're doing is more important than the quality. You just got to get the reps in. If I make 5 calls a day and they're just super high quality, I sound so good and they're just freaking great. And, another guy makes decent amount. He's not great at all. And he makes 500 calls a day. Well, he's definitely going to have more success. So it's about quantity. Okay. It's about quantity when we're doing this. Okay. So I hope this helps to rehash and go over this. Okay. one, you got to get your mind right. You have to get your mind right. Okay. You cannot tell yourself that you suck. You cannot tell yourself that there are no deals out there. You cannot tell yourself that so and so is better than me. You cannot tell yourself that you're nothing. You cannot tell yourself that you're not capable of doing that. You can't tell yourself that, oh, Derek can do that, but I can't. Or he doesn't have kids, I do, right? So you cannot do that because you're affirming that. So don't do that. Okay. You got to get your head straight. Right. And then the next thing is we got to get our target straight. You got to get our target straight, and it has to be a target that you can get excited about, whatever that is for you. If you can get excited about the $2 trillion target, go ahead. So get excited about your targets. Okay. Then we're working backwards. If you have a deal or not, work those numbers out to where you know how many calls you need to make a day, or whatever it is, number of mailers, number of people reached out to, whatever it is, figure out those numbers. It's not hard to figure out. It's basic math. If you had 2 parks under contract, but you didn't close, and you made, 6,000 calls to get the 2 parks under contract, and you made 3,000 calls per park to get it under contract. So you're like, yeah, I don't have a deal, but I did have 2 parks under contract, and I made 3,000 calls to get them there. Well, you have to make 3,000 calls to get another park under contract, because the more parks you get under contract, the more deals you're going to close. Okay. So you got to back into those numbers, and that's going to quantify the action that you need to take on a daily basis. Okay. And then the last thing is you're just going to have to prepare yourself for the BS. You're going to have to prepare yourself to be persistent. You're going to have to prepare yourself to be resilient, and prepare yourself to get punched in the mouth, because you're going to get punched in the mouth. There's no freaking question about it. And a lot of times it's blindside, especially like I get worried when things are going real well. I just do, because that's when I feel like that's when I'm about to get rocked, but when you're in that, you're like, oh, I can't fail, and I'm the best on the planet. So that's one thing. Just prepare yourself for that. And then we're going to have to block the time out every day, whatever that is for you. Maybe it's every 15 minutes. Maybe you're doing calls every 15 minutes. Maybe you're doing hour blocks. Maybe you're doing 2-hour blocks. I like doing longer chunks. Some people like doing shorter chunks, whatever works for you. Get that in order, and then discipline yourself to take the actions every day. Okay. Because the difference between someone that's not a millionaire, someone that is 100 millionaire, or the actions. Difference between someone that's worth 10 million versus 40, or the actions, right? And there's some time that could be involved in that too. Right. So this is this quick, simple blueprint for you to do. Like, the data you need to start going is right here in this episode. Like, oh, Derek, like people go searching for more content, right? This is all you need. Like, this is the action, right? Just break it down. Get your mindset right. Take the action. You'll get somewhere. All right. As simple as that. And if you need help with this, I'd love to help you. Reach out to me on the social media platform. You can DM me the word 2025 or the number 2025, and I'd love to see how we can help you with that. If you're a passive investor, you're a 7 and 8 figure entrepreneur, and you're looking to basically scale your wealth and create generational wealth through mobile home park investing, I'd love to talk to you about how we do that at Victory Capital. We have an ebook out. So if you go to victorycapital.com, you can download that ebook, and you can book a call with me and our team. We'd love to talk to you about investing in mobile home parks and see if our goals align. Because if you have different goals as an investor, like, we don't want to work with you. Or if you're an asshole, we don't want to work. Like, I'm just being blunt. I like to work with great people I can sit down and have a conversation, because we know we can deliver outsized returns at Victory Capital. And the last thing I'll plug in here is that, we have our Facebook group. You definitely want to join that, as we're posting exclusive content. We're going to start doing Q&As on there every couple of weeks on Mobile Home Park Investing Pros on Facebook. So check us out. And if you're interested in joining our group, you can reach out to me as well. And we'll throw some links in the show notes for here. So look, thank you all for watching the MHP show and listening to the MHP show. I'm your host, Derek Vickers. We will be back, stronger than ever, faster than ever in 2025. Let's go blow it up.